Hello, my name is Liz Zuercher, and I'm giving the session called First They Notice Grammar Differences with L1, their first language. There's an old jazz song that says, I know a little bit about a lot of things, and I guess I could say that about myself. I'm really interested in languages, all languages, and my history shows it. I have a bachelor's and a master's in French first, and then a master's in ESL. I taught in Moscow, taught English in Moscow and in Abu Dhabi at the Zayed University. I've lived in Ivory Coast and Azerbaijan, and I studied French intensively in Switzerland in my 20s. My teacher, who spoke 3 languages fluently, as people do in Switzerland, every once in a while would say to me, well, this is just like in English. And I would look at him really stupidly and go, it is, because I didn't even know my own language. And I think that describes our students sometimes too. In higher education, we often have 4 different kinds of students. We have those who are fresh out of their high school and they've been sent off to America to learn English. We have college graduates or people in the middle of their college education. We have business and professional people. And then we have older people who are maybe just they live here and they're trying to improve their English. But we have to keep in mind, for our students, we are language experts. I mean, just all language, because they've never studied deeply language. They've studied just like we did in high school. We had to take a foreign language. We had to take languages in college if we studied education, something else. But I don't know about you, but in high school, I really didn't care about French, but I made a B in it without trying. It wasn't important to me, as important as other things in high school. And so they may have studied some English, but that's about as deep as it goes. For our students, as I said, we're language experts. We know much more about the science of language than they do. And I had 2 questions about my students. What do students realize about the grammar of English compared to their language? And what do I need to know about their language to help them along and say, like my professor did in Switzerland, this is like your language, you should understand this, or this is not like your language, be careful about this thing. And that would be very helpful, I think. So my methodology, I made a survey and can I whiteboard it? No, I cannot. Okay. I made a survey that was very simple. It's just the front page. You can see there's a lot of good white space. I asked these questions. What's your age group? What's your gender? What is your language? Tell me 3 grammar differences between your language and English. And sometimes they could not fill that out until they'd done the last part. The last part is, how would you translate these sentences into your language? There's 4 simple sentences. Write your language for each word, add blanks if necessary, draw lines if the word order is different. And so even the Arabic people had problems. They were saying, do you really want me to write this in Arabic? And I said, yes, exactly the way a good sentence would be written, you know, the opposite way to what we use. And draw lines so I know which words mean what, because you know I don't know your language very well. So here's an example of somebody's translated sentences. They have lines drawn to give me some lines. It was Spanish, so I could make it out, what the actual differences were. So I could kind of check their grammar comments against the way they actually translated those simple sentences, as far as articles or adjectives, things like that. I also instructed students to cross out any unneeded words in English, and that was usually to be or an article if their language didn't have that. It took So my results, the sample size is 47. I was shooting for 50, but 47 is pretty close. So I'm pretty happy. It makes a good little bundle there. It was 5 different classes last semester and this semester. Some students couldn't think of 3 differences, and so they left some blanks. Well, you're going to get some blanks on a survey. One student didn't really understand it all and left the 3 blanks. Okay, but in all, out of a possible 141 blanks, there were 7 total blanks. Still pretty good. Some answers were really about sounds or alphabets or punctuation. So there were 6 answers about sounds. Well, that's not what I was looking for, so I just kind of discounted that. 5 comments were about punctuation. So again, I'm not going to count that. That's not what I'm aiming at. I'm looking for the bigger grammar ideas. Many differences that they commented about were about word order. 27 blanks said something quite specific about word order. And so I was happy with that. That's something I was really targeting, and I was glad for those comments. Many were very accurate grammar comments. 96 blanks had specific grammar comments, so they understood very well. Again, this was 2 different levels. We have 3 levels at Collin College where I teach. Intermediate, advanced, and then transitioning to college. So we don't really deal with beginners, with debutantes. But many of our intermediates are very low speakers. I happen to get some very advanced classes, especially this semester. Here are some of the students' comments. One very perky Korean girl said to me, I wish I knew more about Korean, because she felt like she couldn't comment. Here she is studying English and she was doing very well. But this is something she had never thought about. Another student said, I haven't thought like this. It took them about 30 minutes to fill out my survey, because this is something they had never really thought about. And then an advanced student, a Korean student, sat down and explained to me the to be system in Korean, which is really complicated. He also explained to me that they have another part of speech that we don't have. And so I really learned a lot from this. Yowza. Overall, the students benefited from this chance to compare and contrast their own language and English. I think when they study, they're thinking like it's math or history. I'm studying subject X, right? They're just studying this thing, and it's cut apart, cut away, isolated from anything else that they have studied. And it's not. There's actually some connections between their language and English, whether or not they've studied it before. So there are similarities and differences. We can help point those out. And I think that that would help them learn a lot easier without having to just isolate this English part of their brain. If they could kind of have a language connection there and could think of similarities and differences. My next step was to look up the basics of 20 languages, the 20 languages that my students spoke, the things I didn't know, the language like French, I could just write myself, but and then I compared what I had looked up with what my students had said in their comments, and they were good comments. I could see then that they had made some good comments. They do know more than maybe we give them credit for about languages. So I typed up a handout to give you. I have not uploaded it to Whova yet, Whova Docs. I need to do that after this session, but it could be very helpful to you. On this basic guideline sheet. You can see I have languages listed. I have 20 languages on here, and this covers the language groups we get at Collin. I am very blessed to be at Collin. We have a huge mix of languages. And so they really, if they get to know each other, they have to speak in English. So I'm very happy to be there. Also, I get to talk to people who speak interesting languages. On my guidelines paper, I have Amharic, Arabic, Bengali, Chinese, that's one of our bigger groups, Darcy, no, it's Dari, excuse me, that S is wrong, Dari, Farsi, French, Greek, Hindi, Japanese, Khmer, Korean, Portuguese, Russian, Spanish, Tajik, Thai, Turkish, Urdu, and Vietnamese. So that's a pretty good group of languages there. One of the things I learned, of course, I have on this list the connection between French and Portuguese and Spanish being all Romance languages. But a connection I didn't know about was Dari, Farsi, and Tajik, and that Dari uses an Arabic alphabet and Tajik uses a Cyrillic alphabet, but they're all mutually comprehensible with Farsi. I didn't know that. So of course their grammar is somewhat the same, even though it's expressed in different letters. And that's noted on my guidelines. The first grammar point I was concerned about was whether there is a to be system or not. And so that's the first thing in the line of the guidelines that I talk about. Do they have to be or not to be? The second, what's the word order? Is it subject, object, verb, SOV, or is it SVO, or what? Many languages drop the subject, and I comment on that. Are there noun cases, Russian, Greek? Are there articles or gendered articles or no articles at all? That's something that's interesting. And is there a no verb inflection for person or time? Because that makes studying tenses kind of difficult. You have to explain a lot more, and it's very foreign from what they're used to speaking. So these are the things I tried to tackle on my guideline sheet, and I think I've come up with it's a short list. It's just a guideline, right? It's not deep and exhaustive, and perhaps I've gotten something wrong because I'm not an expert on all these languages. But these guidelines, it's just a, front and back and a little bit more with my references on it. That's all there is to that guideline. But if you have somebody pop up in your class that speaks a language you don't know anything about, it would be helpful to be able to tell them, well, your language is not at all in this way like English, so you're going to have to be ready to learn a new thing, or this is actually just like your language, and so don't put up a barrier, right? Just go ahead and think of it as the same as your language. And I hope this has been of some interest to you, and perhaps I've gone too fast, but are there any questions? In the chat, maybe? Thank you for joining me, all of you.
Liz, I think this is a very important starting point in any class, because once I know I speak a SOV language, and English is SVO language. So sometimes when you read students' writings, like it looks English, but it sounds like Korean, sounds like Chinese, because that's how they express it. Somehow the structure and the word order is so different. And I don't remember the names of books, but I used to read some of the books, we have in TESOL, where they talk about the common structures of a Chinese, or, like the Koreans or something like that. And also in our texts of the journals, like teachers come out and talk about this, some of the journals, like the articles. So it is very important. That's how you can help them better. You know, oh, why this is happening. And instead of saying, put it here, put it there, you know, like I say, it starts in the subject and starting with verb and object is ending. So that makes a big difference. So good job in taking an effort to do the survey. So.
Oh, you're welcome. I was thinking about doing like a phonemic kind of thing the same way, a guideline next time.
Good.
Okay.
Liz, I wanted to mention that in the Hoover chat, someone made a comment. I have found that 2 languages in one book allows language learners to compare the structure of both languages. How about you?
Yeah, I wouldn't put them in the same book, but I would certainly talk about them because we do have such a big mixture of students. There's my husband who teaches middle school ESL only has Spanish speakers. And so he has more of the bilingual situation. He does not speak Spanish, but he's learned all the bad words because of them. Anyway, but for somebody like at Collin College, we just have such a good mix. Somebody, Cynthia Garza says, would you suggest having an anchor chart to show similarities? Again, that would have to be with how many languages are in your class. A big mix, it would just be good to say to them individually, be careful of this. And I do that when I'm talking about certain language points. I will say, you Vietnamese speakers, be careful of this. Or, hey, Spanish speakers, you have a tendency to do this. And so hopefully they're, you know, I make eye contact and make sure that they're paying attention. It's mostly because this information can be used in class, as Marissa is asking. Specific ways to use it is just to give them a heads up when it is a language that has extreme differences. And in general, I say, if you don't have to be in your language, be careful when you're writing this sort of sentence. Make sure that you're sticking that extra unit in that you're not used to thinking about, right? So I'm teaching grammar specifically this semester, and so it works there. But for listening, speaking, whatever, it's not really the big focus. So you have to just make a note of it to them when you can. If they make a mistake, you know, that you're looking at with them, you can say a kind word about the difference or similarities, you know, and hope that they really get it. Stephanie, did you have a question? I can't seem to turn you on. Can you write a comment in the chat?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, yes, I can.
Oh, I would like, are you going to be able to share that survey with us? That would be such valuable information for us to
Well,
have.
the guidelines, not the survey, but the guidelines.
Okay,
I'm going to
the guidelines.
upload to, once I figure out how to do it, as soon as I'm finished, I will upload it to Hoover Documents, I think.
Okay.
I saw that there was a list of documents there, but I did not know what to do before. So yeah, it's just a, you know, 1 page front and back. And then the last one, I got a lot of my information from online Britannica and Ethnologue, if you've ever heard about that. Also, I've been reading a book called Language Awareness that kind of sparked it. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I teach high school students, and this year I have a large number of Spanish speakers, but I've had Korean, Egyptian, you know, Turkish, and that information can be so helpful. And the other,
all those languages are on the list. Yeah.
And just more and more of them are coming into high school as newcomers. So that has been a big challenge for me because I'm used to them having some kind of background. And
and many times we do get students who are coming from American high schools who have been in ESL programs who still cannot go on to credit college courses.
Right.
So they go to our program. And so we sometimes get those students as well.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much. This is very valuable information.
Thank you. Cynthia, I mentioned a book called Language Awareness, which of course is not right here. And it's something I just picked up at Half Price Books. It's from 1994, and the title is Language Awareness. And there were 3 different authors, and it isn't on this page right here. I'm sorry about that. It will be on that handout because I updated it and then put at the end of that handout under references. The other 2 things I referred to was the online Britannica and the online Ethnologue, which is kind of a catalog of languages made by the Summer Institute of Linguistics in Dallas, if you know anything about them. Lisa, they tell me that there is a Whova documents that I need to upload it to for the whole conference. So if you just go to that, it will be there a few minutes after this session. Okay.
I just want to share something, you know, like I remember when my children went to school, you know, like they, especially in the middle school, they had something called sentence diagramming. So they kind of, you know, they have to kind of say subject, verb, and kind of thing. It is a kind of tedious work, but, you know, like it is a very good way to children to learn, you know, the structure. And as you said, you know, like sometimes with the Korean student, you said she didn't know about language because you pick up your own language, you don't focus on the structure. You know how to speak, how to write kind of thing, like they're learning another language. So I think that kind of thing probably might help also. I used to think when I was teaching there, you know, like it's, maybe I should do that, I should do this, you know, but then we don't have time to do all those kinds of things, but maybe a quick way of, you know, showing subject and, you know, preposition and things like that. I have done in somewhere in the presentation, but not in terms of having exercise for students, you know, like kind of show them.
You're right. You're right, Jay. And I will just tell you the truth. I find grammar to be very boring in any language. It's not the part of the language I like. I will teach it. I can teach it. I will. But I work very hard to make it not boring. And what I've done is write words on cards, different parts of speech, just on an index card, give a student 3 of them and have little bins that have the part of speech, have them come up, read off their words, stick it in the right bin. And that will help them get the idea of the categories and getting used to thinking, looking for LYs, for adverbs and that sort of thing. And so I work very hard at making it not boring for me. And hopefully it's not boring for them too. But yes, I've done my share of diagramming.
In the beginning of the grammar class, you know, I used to show that the parts of speech. So there, you know, I can put a right sentence and then, you know, like I kind of each one of them mark what it is. Especially Spanish speakers, you know, the adjective goes after the noun or things. They can, oh my God, this has to go in front of the thing in English, you know, like so. Something like systematically knowing and, you know, visually seeing it, I think will help the students, you know, like.
Yeah, I do start with a PowerPoint that goes through, starts with nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and then we later on do a little build onto that. But each one is a different color. I'm very color oriented. And, and then at the end, they have to say, well, where's the noun in this and where's the verb? And that's always a good warm up for any level, I think, just to kind of sound them out to see how quickly they answer and to get them thinking the right way.
I think this brings a conscious effort in themselves to understand the structure, visualize it, so they can go back and look at their sentences and they can fix them. So it's a good way to do it.
Okay. Well, this is probably early, but I didn't expect so many people this early in the morning, even if you're at home. I think it's asking a lot to get up at 8:30 on a Saturday. But thank you for doing that.
Many of them were there at 7:30 for the first session, so 45 of them, So very good. Good.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz. Good seeing you. See you some other time. Bye.
Bye.